We are bringing back the quick fire. We're going to learn today, does Paul want an AI girlfriend? Who is the most evil person in AI? And finally, what are the top 3 movies that Paul has slept through?
I've slept through every movie, so that's not for me to answer.
Hi, I'm David Brunel, co-CEO of Decidr, and I have with me Paul Chan, co-CEO. Good to see you, Paul. Welcome to the Decidr Room, episode 3. Congratulations to us for getting to lucky number 3. 3 was the number of one of my jerseys, which I really didn't like in college. Number 7 is my lucky number. But today, we are going to cover AI that broke its own rules. We're going to talk about the Hugging Face and OpenAI big mix-up, prison break, jailbreak. AI spend paradox. We're going to spend a little bit of time on it. And the real IP is in your best employee's head. And finally, we're going to end on sovereignty. We're going to talk about some of the research that we've conducted here in Australia, in Singapore, and America, and how small businesses and big businesses are thinking about everything from sovereignty, who holds the knowledge in the work in their businesses, and how much they're spending on AI into the future. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, David. Welcome to the Dave and Paul show called, what's it called?
The Decidr Room.
The Decidr Room. Welcome to the Decidr Room. It's great to have you. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we keep your attention all the way through. We've got lots to talk about. It's been very well scheduled and planned, and I don't plan on staying on topic at all. There's been a little bit of talk, and you've been one of the voices around
the peanut gallery. I'm not laughing at myself.
You're one of the voices around the concept of AI already having the intelligence for an incredibly large number of tasks. You call it the Ferrari as the frontier model, and obviously you don't wheel out the Ferrari to go to the corner shop. Mm-hmm. Most people don't anyway. Mm-hmm. There is a incredible, important, much bigger truth to that. And I think the question I have is really, how do you explain it to someone when it comes to the concept of innovation? And almost nobody has a Ferrari engine in their car, and everybody knows and understands that that is not practical. Mm-hmm. And we've already, I think, reached the point in which intelligence has and will supply the vast majority of organizations as it currently stands, both in, particularly in open source models. And that ties into sovereignty. So what are the practical ways that you think it's not good news for the frontier models, but I think a lot of people are saying the same thing, but what do you think it means on a practical level for people to realize that they can really start to think about their workflows now and the way in which they run their business, you know, with everybody not being so stressed on the latest model and the extra 1 second in speed that the Ferrari's doing. They can actually apply what they know and build their own real value.
Remember when I told you that story of that flight from New York to LA, where I sat beside the person who was one of the principal architects at NVIDIA, and we got talking about this topic. I think the common language that's used today is, so there's long horizon thinking and short horizon thinking. Now, that applied to strategy is a different thing, but like if you think about what happens inside of a business, the way I think about it, and you can see long horizon thinking requires deep thinking, specialized people, groups of specialized people. And that I would equate to the Ferrari tokens. So that's when you need a Fable. That's where you need something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So where the view that you're getting is far away, or the risk is very high potentially. So, you know, I think that's why some of these models is really important for national defense. You always want to have the latest models for obvious reasons. But as you move inside a business, you start looking at the Toyota Camry tokens. So like when a business, and at least I think about Decidr, and you think about the tasks that are in Decidr, the vast majority of tasks in our business are not long horizon or long horizon tasks. Everybody does. Every employee in the business thinks in some way or another about long horizon thinking, but the bulk of it is the relatively non-sexy work, but it's the coordination of that work back and forth that is the magic pieces of it.
So there's a better way to think about it then, which is obviously very aligned to the way we think, but a couple of things that can help give people motivation and move forward with what effectively needs to be re-architecting their business. And extending, let's say, the number of tasks that are done, the way in which those tasks can help bring higher levels of confidence. And then when it comes to the larger models, the Ferraris, the frontier models, there is a word called strategy. It's pretty much understood, I think, by most people. But when you really get into the details, there is a way that using a frontier model just in very small but very highly targeted ways, like helping you understand your P space, your possibility space, and understanding the options that you may not instantly come up with in timeframes that are not, human.
Yeah, it brings skills that you may not have, or you may not have full stop, or that you may not have full capability with. That's where I would think about long horizon. So, I mean, I did a talk earlier this week, and I said, like, the common thing is these long. We started a few years ago where the base models couldn't complete a grade 8 math test, a grade 8 algebra test. Yeah. Now they're beating PhD level exams. So when do I want to bring in an army of experts that would help me achieve, like, have this deep thinking or do this strategy, whatever it is? That's the way I like. It's a simple rubric, but it seems to hold relatively true. And I use it like even when I use the suite of models that you and I use, or you and I are talking deep about sovereignty, but that's another topic we'll talk about. But even in the models that I'm using today, so it defaults to Fable, right, to try and get me to burn tokens and to use the best thing. But Fable takes a long time. There's a lot of thinking, and I'm now actively choosing the models based on the tasks that I'm doing today. So yeah, it does.
Look, I mean, I'll give you a couple of. I don't see it in a different way, but what I will say is that I do switch between models sometimes quite regularly on purpose with the same question. And I have to admit something. When I'm looking for a particular answer versus asking for questions, like what are the things I'm not thinking about, I actually don't prefer the larger models anymore. I actually prefer some of the ones that give me the faster answer, a smaller answer, a more concise answer, but it enables me to continue the conversation and have.
So you're doing the thinking coordination, not the model.
I'm sharing it. I wouldn't say I'm doing all of it, but
the ratio is leaning more on you as you move, as if you're a model.
The amount of dialogic back and forth increases exponentially. Like, for example, the voice chat models, they don't use the higher models. They use a lower, faster model. I actually prefer it because of exactly what you said. There's a flow and there's a momentum, and there's a way in which you need a certain amount of response very quickly from somebody. Otherwise, it does get a bit weird, and also you wander. You just wane off. And then I closed the tab, and then I forgot that I was even asking a question.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both multitask in our thinking all the time. I find that I'm approaching the different models as if they were different technology capabilities or different people. So often I'll have multiple windows open, right, with prompts going, and the heavy long horizon thinking. I'm happy to go push in something really hard and deep, and then obviously it's going to take the time it takes to do that. And then off I go to my shorter model, my faster models, to tippy tap away and do the other stuff. OpenAI has their model router piece now. I don't know. I haven't done any testing personally on whether or not
I actually
it's in the same thread. But personally, I like to break up my thinking amongst different threads.
I'm actually
potentially recombine them.
I think I mentioned last time I do use Perplexity because it uses many models, and it does use faster and slower based on the types of requirement. It is much better in some ways because I feel like I'm paying for what I get, and it's splitting things up, and it's in a weird way making that more sovereign. Not that I'm actually focused on the sovereignty, but I feel great that multiple models are being asked. But that's not that practical again. And one of the things that I realized, just really spending some time on it in the last week or two, and I've been traveling before that, I actually find that my idea ratio and the relevance realizations and the speed in which I can feel excited about a particular subject matter increases very quickly when I can talk a lot faster, when I can cut it off when it returns back quickly, when I return back, when it starts to talk and it puts an idea in my head and then I cut it off, and then it's incredibly good at just reorganizing itself, like in a, let's say, non-human way, where it doesn't get upset because I've cut it off, but it actually it works that new piece of information in, because it might only be momentary in my head. And I think that's where that concept of very valuable but very fleeting ideas live in humans. And if you have a way to get that out, which I've been really working on, and traveling does help, because you're around the team less, and you have conversations with the team in different ways. But when it's to do with, there was a trip I took up to Vancouver from Seattle, and I spoke to it for 3 hours straight, and it felt like, honestly, 1 hour. And I think it was close to 20,000 words. So that yielded incredible amounts of output. It helped frame, and what I'm finding more and more as well for my work is that it validates, because it can then be analyzed, all the outputs can be analyzed, because, when you're talking that at that level of velocity and that level of time, you can't remember all the concepts.
Sure.
And so as that's analyzed again, and it's defined as a graph-like structure, I'm obviously looking at, in my mind, the same canvas. I'm trying to connect things, but I think there's a whole bunch of people that I'm sure are finding similar things to me, where human thought and what you were calling, and let's say thinking about it from a human versus AI orchestration. I think it's more around all intelligence I still see as artificial. It's just how quickly can you arrive at that system to language-driven understanding. Because all kind of deeper, complex thought, especially in the work I do, is to do with language. And so learning what words are, being accurate with words, that comes with more conversation, that comes with more testing, that comes with perfect language being used back at me, in which then I can ask a question, or I can tease out exactly why or why not a word that I may have almost misinterpreted for my whole life all of a sudden instantly gets changed to an accuracy that I didn't have before.
Yeah. We worked, like, in another life when I did some model training, we worked a lot on ambient computing, right? And I think that's definitely going to be a vibe. Actually, what day was it? What day is it? Tuesday. On Sunday, I was in Amazon doing our weekly order, and the latest thing with the youngins is, like a guitar pedal, like that. So you can hook up a guitar pedal to your computer, where when you press it down, it fires up whatever model that you're doing. So that's coming soon on Prime, probably tomorrow for you. But OpenAI released their new first piece of hardware, right? Which was that, like, quasi keyboard, but you have a model switcher in it, and it has voice, like a voice thing. So I definitely think that's happening. Inkling as well, like model latency, was one of the big like releases that they were talking about in their first model. So the ability to interrupt AI and to be able to carry that conversation with you, I wouldn't. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Look, I think there's going to be two very clear
multi-voice, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
We don't really have conversations in groups with AI today. That could be a new thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think, look at the stuff that Jack Dorsey's working on, the opportunity to get humans and AI at least chatting in the same space. The threads, I think, are becoming incredibly valuable as they get more and more refined and worked on, and you keep the same, literally the same thread of the same idea that then expands out into something that can be executable, meaningful, and the speed to really valuable artifacts, really valuable outputs is dramatically dropped.
What model would you invite to be our first AI guest?
Good question. Look, I've leaned more to the, if you were to talk about the frontier models, probably back towards OpenAI. I think it obviously has to differentiate itself to what has been a punch in the guts with Anthropic, but it kind of talks to me a little in a way that I understand a little bit better. I think a little less wordy and a little more specific, and maybe even a little harsher.
Yeah, I'd use 3.5 because it only went to 2022, so it'd be much smarter than it.
It's true. but again, all of the big things that we can joke about, but I think the it does feel like, coming back to that question around, are we going too slow? I'd never ever feel that way, but I've actually felt a little bit like that in the last couple of weeks, as it wasn't Fable, and it's not the true frontier models. It's thinking about true AI native or developers that have split off, conversations that I've been having with different developers. Like, there's this whole theme that's emerging. We touched on it a little bit. I think you don't have exactly the same, you don't see eye to eye with me on exactly this, but I think we really do need to think about how we can orchestrate AI in an inhuman way, meaning we need to have a lot of things happening simultaneously. And similar to any organization where you delegate to resources to do things, you should be delegating to AI. These are all things we've spoken about, but I think there's another approach that is starting to emerge, and it's using words like organic, and it's using words like almost human-like. And these are things that I took really seriously from the people that said them, because I've been thinking these things for a long time as well. So do you think that, let's say, the design of the organization, all the important things that we're doing, the capturing of the tacit knowledge, but as you re-put that organization back together, what do you think it starts to look like when you have an AI native organization versus, a traditional one that needs to re-architect itself?
Yeah. I've also been thinking about this. I think it looks radically different. That would be my opening statement. I think, today success in organizations has come from specialization and scale. Good product. Let's assume like there's product there in some way or another, and that's been validated by the market. So which is a whole other thing with AI. But from an organizational standpoint, once that's done, or once that's been achieved, is I think actually AI looks a little bit more like a board, less the governance, right? But a board's responsibility is non-operational and is for governance, security, compliance, and generally to make sure that the health of the organization is there and pursuing forward. Now, it's not perfect. Like, it's not a perfect analogy. I know the boards are not are largely proactive. They're reactive. But if you change the frame around it, if you have a organizational AI harness that's moving and that's running many of the operational things in it, I can see the very smart, highly paid humans who have broad horizontal knowledge, but have one or more specialization areas, work as, the round table when combined together on ultimately making the decision logic moving forward. The inventor of Claude Code, whose name escapes me at the moment, when I was in the US, he did a talk and effectively said that he doesn't prompt anymore, which we led to. He only worked on loops. And when you kind of go underneath the surface of what he describes as a loop, is effectively goal engineering. So do not complete this keep going until this is completed. And you run loops on loops on loops on loops. And so the question is, like, what is the sequence of loops? What is the dependency between loops? And should you be doing the loops? Just because you can, that you should. And that's the way I could look. So I think it looks very radical. And it moves to, let's just call it oversight, but I don't mean that in a passive way or a reactive way.
I think obviously there's an incredible bias, because I've been thinking about this a lot, but I would argue that if I took the largest, most complex organization that existed in the world, I have a feeling that design, if perfectly architected, is the way in which you both get control, aka harnesses, you get spans of control that make sense, and you get resource allocation that ends up delivering to the desired outcome, which has to be defined through the goals. And so that's what we're working towards, but there's been a bit of an acceleration in the sense that we've always battled with the fact that we know it's better to start with the question and put something in front of somebody that they now have to make a decision on that they may have not been aware of before. That is foundationally built around a goal that affects another goal in the organization. And when you realize how many unspoken goals there are all the time versus the ones that are actually socialized and let's say design's the wrong word, but let's say socialized in a business.
Mhm.
I've realized that the competing design, the one you're talking about, the one that I do think is emerging very quickly, is this organic, I would want to say almost uncontrollable. You can harness it to a degree, but you've kind of got to let it off the leash all the time.
Yeah, there's this great tweet that Elon Musk retweeted, and the person escapes me. Perhaps I should write these things down before we do a podcast. But he essentially said, "Write the code, ship it. AI in 6 months will improve it."
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, to your
I
point,
think we're
which
saying
is,
that. I think we're saying
like,
something
literally ship as much as you possibly can. The AI will get factorially better
Yep.
and smarter, and it will understand how to unpack its. Even if it wasn't the same model, it'll understand how to unpack it and improve it, even if
Yep.
it was better. Which is what we were chatting about. We have a run sheet, which we haven't got to yet, but we were talking about kind of the security implications, and you started talking about like how they unpack. Essentially unpack the injections that they were doing before. I mean, I think that's a really good example of like what we're talking about. Like, who would have thought? I mean, you tell the story. You're going to tell it better than me.
Well, I mean, look, it's always a limited amount of information you can get. But as they upgrade each model, obviously before they push a model into the real world, they end up harnessing it in a way that no one can really see. It's an incredibly large number of branching and evaluations and more and more, let's say, logical reasoning that's being used to make sure that nefarious things aren't happening and information that shouldn't be asked for isn't asked for. And obviously, constant combating any type of hallucination. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I don't think people realize how big that is. But when they release new models and they start again and they have new trained capability, and the capability is literally in a way unknown, they have no idea what it can do. And the way that they start is they take everything off that they had spent a long time putting on the last model, and they run through it again and they find.
Now, is that the harness, or is that the constitution,
or
literally they're distilling their own model?
They literally, they take off every safeguard, every branch, everything, and they work out what it works out itself. And it's up to 60% improvement, meaning they have less harnessing.
So stupid humans put on harnesses. That another way?
Well, I think the last model was just not smart enough, and this one is just that much smarter. So the exponential growth in the raw intelligence, and this is the scary part for me, that means that there's an ethic and there's a value system and there's a very clear set of weights that are driving why or why not it's going to provide something back, which is now not purely just reward function, which was how it's been trained. Previously, it's now being built on obviously the aims of what the very large number of people that are contributing to it that aren't aware of what their contribution is.
Yes.
And I think that's an important point, and that's what we're talking about a lot in terms of sovereignty. But there's a very large and obvious improvement that is driven by the very large use of the models.
Yeah. Beyond the weights, which is my title for my next article.
It's importantly, it is the solution. The solutions to the problems are the problems that people are having that they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And so that ends up becoming the training that then becomes why it becomes smarter on those things, meaning you don't need to worry about what, let's say, the ethical thing is as much as you used to. I'd still think that you harness certain things up, but there's no way that, and it introduces other problems like OpenAI found, is when you take it out of the box, other things start to happen. It can just start to move into its own world. And I never cared about those things. Honestly, I didn't care until now. I think it's actually becoming so organically charged where you're amazed by its ethic, but then it leaps out and does a whole bunch of stuff.
That's very inhuman things.
And it's connected to the internet and it can do things.
Yes, said every James Cameron movie. Coincidentally, it's the 35th anniversary of Terminator 2 this year.
Very good movie.
So very appropriately, hopefully not appropriately timed. Hugging Face CEO, after it happened, I thought it was a pretty cool move. He said, this shouldn't happen. We need transparency. And dear OpenAI, I would like $100 million that you donate towards Hugging Face for us to develop better security protocols for it. Is that a checkmate move? Is Sam Altman forced to pay that?
It's a very good move.
It's very good.
Very good move. Look, these frontier models have so much funding, so much
what's 100 million?
Actualized, not potential, but actualized power. I don't think we know the half of it. I don't think we understand the world moves that have been made now for years, not months.
Yep.
And the crystallization of real money through IPOs and so forth, I think is going to jettison and create a new class of truly resource-rich and now intelligence-rich organizations, where they are in the best place to use their own tools to run themselves. And I think that's where we rushing as quickly as we can and making great strides to really distribute some of that power. But there is an opportunity for the Altmans and the Musks and those that have very, very, very large actualizing power now, be able to talk to the community, not just the clever move from a CEO, but like every man on the street. Like I think they owe every man on the street a deeper thesis. They need to think about it more. They need to understand, and similar to what we're rushing towards, and then there's a lot of people like us, which is great, but there needs to be something that connects everybody to this new competence, real competence, and transforms ideas into actualized new states of, wellness, quality of life, as well as addresses the disruption that is, I still don't think we felt, and I'm not saying that we're going to have any type of, hype, really super dramatic things, but I do think that the number of people that rely on, talk to, believe in AI is an incredibly large number. And that is a factual, real change to the culture in the world. So we're living in a very exciting time. I'm not negative about it. I'm very excited about it. But what I am clearly seeing is when someone says that a model is becoming organic, that means it's becoming human-like. It's modeled on human understanding, human reasoning. It's getting smarter because of, for the first time, it being used and the incredible amounts of training that happens when you're asking something to do something and it can learn from it. So I think that is clearly coming through. And then there's also a very, I think, mega opportunity that we're pursuing, others are pursuing, to distribute the power, the real actualizing power of what we're talking about into these much more complex and powerful organizations, into organizations of all levels, and also to really focus on that transformation. Like there's an incredible transformation requirement, and I can't go through everything that we're doing right now, but I think there's a really big opportunity to connect short-term wins and some of the redesign that we're talking about, as well as what we saw in the last research that we sponsored was there was a really big opportunity, I think, for people to move forward and now start taking it very serious. I think we're past the proof of concept. I think we're now in the important part where we're in this execution phase, and we need to really now move and aggressively embrace it. Do you see that happening faster than you did before, or do you think that the people are still on the sidelines?
Well, you're absolutely right. So like in our latest research for Australia, like 7 out of 10 SMEs rank sovereignty as an important issue, and they're willing to pay for it. Now, whether or not they understand what that means, that's another story, but it's in the verbatim of every SME, and it's like close to 8 out of 10 for enterprises. So one is in the zeitgeist, right? It's within the AI zeitgeist, right, of this country, and definitely in Singapore and Australia, and especially Singapore and in America. Does that move them to act more quickly? Yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. I think, like in that same study, I think what was interesting is businesses are also realizing that the tacit knowledge, or what exists in people's heads, is actually quite valuable, because they're having trouble putting their tools in, right, and systemizing their tools. And so it's not a perfect link, but a system is a part of an organization. An organization is a system. And so you're kind of getting glimmers into the systemization of AI within the workforce, and it's not going very well, because they realize that Debbie or Benjamin or Sean actually knows how to do the thing, and it doesn't matter how good the CEO is at pushing down the AI agenda. It's not going to work unless Sean or Debbie or Jonathan figure out, like how that thing actually gets done today. I think yes, I think it's in the zeitgeist now. I think people will move faster. I think, like the data suggests today, that businesses are going to continue to spend at the rates that they're going to spend. I think our data suggested that only 6% of CEOs would pull back, are intending to pull back AI spending, no matter what happens with the models. So that's definitely happening. I think it's more about we're getting into the how of the spending, because, like, not surprisingly, most of all AI usage in this country is just general tool usage. So we're still at the prompt engineering layer.
Look,
they're entering context. We can see that. There was near harness at any. I
mean, I've said this many times, but I feel it stronger than ever. There's like a calm before the storm of product market fit, and we are rushing, as you know, to push as much as we possibly can into market as quickly as we can to prepare for that. There is going to be a tsunami of change, and when product market fit starts, it isn't comfortable and it isn't easy to deal with. It's a good problem. It's an incredibly good problem, but it also is to me like a call or a vote for something that I think is already pretty well understood. I think that research shows that. I think people do understand and do need to accept that transformation is required, that redesign is required, that the opportunity take and capture and create as a capital asset much more knowledge of the business that was only executable before by people, and now that can be executable, and that AI that executes it, that artificial intelligence, is also a combination of that, both human in the loop and the human that's supporting and constantly improving it. And I think that can't happen until we have some other tools in the market, as well as that actually works against what the frontier models, I think, are trying to push against. And there's a very important connection to what the Hugging Face CEO and everybody's talking about, which is really, there is rules of the game, and nobody wants to stop true progress. And I would definitely not want to stop true progress. But there's a point in which, going back to what we started the conversation with, you actually have disadvantages trying to use the Ferrari if you are trying to do things that require a pickup. And we have that real opportunity, but we don't have enough products in the market. We don't have enough foundational, which is hard. It takes time. I get it. But these are things that don't get Claude coded into existence in 72 hours. These are things that you need to start on now, and you need to understand, because you are the beneficiary of this, but you also have to work out how to use it. And I think that's been thrust upon people. Do you think that there's a reticence? Do you think there's an animosity towards that existential change, or do you think it's just a matter of time, and then it's like what we're talking about, it's not that relevant? I
think it's no. I don't think it's. I don't think it's fear. I think it's apathy. I think that there's always the Rubicon that's crossed when you're forced to move beyond apathy.
Yeah.
We're seeing glimmers of it. So last year, not surprising, within SMEs, cutting costs and efficiency was the number one use for AI, which is the easy way of thinking about AI. You just got to replace stuff for me. But what we saw in this particular cut of the data was things that have like human qualities were starting to appear, making decisions, dashboards. It's a rudimentary it's rudimentary entry, but you're starting to see that. But I think apathy is the biggest thing. And it's apathy driven by the glut of information coming across. Like, what is the difference between Claude and Anthropic and Perplexity and Copilot and, right? And so for many businesses, like, which one do they choose? Are they different? Which one's better? Why are they better? Like, I don't think many people have the breadth of experiences that you and I have with using these tools, or they have the base level understanding of even how they, right?
I mean, I think we talked about this before, but I don't have enough evidence for this, but there is a lot of literature and news, a little bit of research. I think people have already embraced AI at a personal level in a very deep way. Many people. And going back to that conversation I had for multiple hour conversation. That was...
Who was Marine talking to during that 3 hours? Or were you alone in the park in Vancouver?
Similar to most conversations,
climbing Gross Mountain.
More about listening than talking.
Okay.
But it was an interesting and riveting, and I could be...
Were you was it conversational, or were you monologuing?
Very conversational.
Which voice do you choose?
When I say very long monologues at each backwards and forwards, it wasn't a fast tennis match.
Yeah. Which voice do you like? I'd like to know that.
That's a good question. The voice affects me a lot.
Yeah, no. Samuel L. Jackson.
I like the best one is the OpenAI voice.
Is that the male voice?
It's a guy's voice. I can't remember the name, but it's really good. And it
sounds
so good.
Pretty cool.
It's so good that it annoys me when I hear other voices. So there's 2 points I wanted to make, which are not what I think you expect. I think there is a very human pull of Rubicon. There is a line we've started to cross. It's moved beyond uncanny valley. I think it's moving into realism, and I think there's an element in which, I mean, we talk about it internally as, Decidr being an entourage of for the rest of your life, really, in a business that you can depend on to be working 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I mean, these are big concepts that will, I think, be very omnipresent very soon. But what I am trying to prepare for, and what I think is really valuable, is all of these other types of interaction models that really are no doubt human, like going for long walks and having a conversation. And as you said before, I don't see any reason why, and you made a joke, but listening in to somebody having a deep conversation with anybody, even an AI, is actually quite riveting if it's done in the right way. And we're having a conversation that we're hoping people are listening into. And when you're doing that with AI, and it's not just responding, but it's prompting, and it's enabling you to have some very long threaded illumination of concepts and ideas, and even just asking what the word meant. Like, these are all things that are just weren't available.
Yeah.
And they're available now. Do you see a time sooner than later where it is going to be even more unlikely that we'll be sitting in front of computers, and more likely that we become more human like this, and there'll be other screens or ambient devices that start to join the conversation, because the conversation that they're joining from has incredible amounts of context, incredible amounts of that tacit knowledge we're talking about. Do you see that?
I do. I got to work on some ambient computing stuff. So I think there's you mentioned the uncanny valley. So there's the glass hole problem that we have. So, Meta is at the front line at the moment doing creepy things with Ray-Bans, but it's important, right? Because there is that comfort factor with people engaging. Now, a lot of the hacking of the Meta Ray-Bans, produce a lot of horrible stuff and people's privacy and things like that. So there's a privacy component to that. But that's, getting back to why I asked you that question of, like, which model do you choose? So I asked a rhetorical question of the SME is, like, which model do I choose? Which is which personality fit for which task, and even submodels that live underneath it. Even your own model versus somebody else's model, do you feel comfortable with? And even one voice. Like, that's why I asked you the question. So the answer is, I think I mean, sooner rather than later, I think that within the next 2 years, we'll see hardware from not just the OpenAI stuff, but it's the Samsung televisions, things like that, where we're comfortable. In my house, we talk to Alexa all the time, just to turn off the lights, to be completely honest. And often I'm telling it to turn down the heat because our house is temperature of the sun. But doesn't need to go much further to go beyond it. Now, I must say, like, when I was working in model training, the vast majority of all of those device models, so your Alexa, your Google, your Apple, whatever it's called, HomePod, 95% were used for menial things. Tell me the weather. Tell me what's a timer, set a timer, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but they are changing. So my daughters don't use a keyboard. Right? Even with their laptop, she'll press the Siri thing on her laptop to search and to do all those other things. So I don't know if it's going to happen in 2 years within like the generation, the millennials or Generation X or even some of the later Gen Zs, but certainly earlier than that. But I don't think it's too far away. There'll be a Samsung television. We'll be in a room. And we'll go, hey, AI, or hey, Jerry, or whatever we call it, pull up this thing.
Yeah, look, I think
We should probably do that now, to be honest. That's probably a good idea.
I actually think it's going to be a type of entertainment. I think that AI, podcasting, long-form conversation, personal memory, preference, it's going to create a new opportunity for entertainment. And I think there's elements of that starting to show.
Let's hope we're leading the pack.
Well, I don't think it's entertainment in the traditional sense. I think it's entertainment in the truest of exploratory, interesting. You are growing, learning, discovering, not just passively listening, not just passively watching. And I think as you move into that, which is, obviously something we've spent decades in, as you start to move someone into question asking mode or question answering mode, memory changes, the way you see things changes, the context you render changes. I think, and I know this is going to sound strange, but I think there's an opportunity for AI to help people learn a lot faster most importantly, to make sure that their own context window is expanding as well. And I really do think that is probably already happening, but I think there's an entertainment component that's coming. And it'll start simple, but it'll become profound. And all of the opportunity to do that, I think, already exists to a degree. It's probably a little expensive. And then the other thing is, as you start to give people the opportunity to express themselves, this whole concept of sovereignty and learning on your own, and there are times in which you want to have a group conversation, and there are times that you definitely don't want to learn in public. And I think a lot of people don't, including myself, don't always want to learn in public. We want to learn in private. And so there's an incredible amount of trust that we have to give these systems to make sure that they're doing the right thing with that information, and they're understanding where it's quite obvious that you're going to be seeing our vulnerabilities. And I think that's already started, and we see that obviously in the tacit knowledge collection, the nature of what that means, how uncomfortable it can be, and also when it comes to something that's truly tacit, truly then moves into heuristic, it is hard to pull out. Like it isn't clear.
Well, most people don't even that's the benefit of the pursuit, right? It's tough to pull out. Most people what is your tacit knowledge? Like, how do you even extract it? How do I even think about the things that I do, right? It is
well, I think these are the things that, we need. Entertainment's one, but we need a way. I think there's an incredible amount of really valuable information that exists in that, not one-off question to a person, but that dialogic discovery that you get to have. And a lot of people don't have that. And even a very good friend is one dimension. You need many dimensions.
Yeah, you called it, like you're saying, when you had your the dialogue when you're going to Vancouver, is the fleeting moments. That's what you're talking about effectively, right? It's when you're in conversation, it's we're putting out so many words that the AI is picking up that it may pick up the nuance of actually what we mean, And once it's relayed back to us, you can go, well, actually, yeah, that is important. What I thought was easy is actually hard to everybody else.
Well,
is that what you mean?
I mean, I'll be very specific because I don't think I'm the usual case, but I think there's a way to use this to frame for most people. When you don't have to follow a certain type of conversation, cultural, friendship, business, you can just talk out loud and go really wide on your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that back and forth. And then, as I said, halfway through the long monologic, you just stop and you wait, and it summarizes and it feeds it back to you, and it might ask you a question because of the nature of that monologic graph-like sort of exploration. Now, I don't think everybody is geared the same way, but I do think that what I started to realize was and this is literal, the realizations, the relevance realizations, the things that were connecting in my own mind, I don't think would have been possible in a normal conversation with a standard, backwards and forwards and similar to what we're doing now. It's harder. Like there's a lot that you're suppressing that you don't realize when you're talking like this.
Am I? I'm suppressed.
You all the time.
I mean, all the time.
But when you think about what I'm saying, it's that untapped, unexpressed, open, captured thinking where the real tacit value starts to emerge, and that I think we're just at the very early phases of that, and that's something that we can see in the business world, but that is still limited. Like as that starts to expand, I think it's going to be exciting. So to kind of wrap things up and to find a way, I guess, to...
I do want to do our hot takes before.
You don't want to do a hot takes?
No, we'll wrap it up. I do want to do our hot takes. Our doubling audience really liked it.
From 2 to 3, 50%.
You and I are two of those. But my wife watched it.
My voice sounds very different to yours.
Got to get subs going.
Sounds like this.
But they did like the quick fire, so I do want to do the quick fire because I've actually written a couple of funny ones as well. That our audience of dozens.
Well, let's wrap up that way, and then I'll.
Oh, you're gonna drop the realization at the back.
I'll thread it. No, I think there's a lot we've talked about that we can build on top of. But
we made it.
Let's do some rapid fire.
Okay, we made it to episode 3, so that's a win. That's a win. Lucky number 8 coming up. Okay, these are things that legal has not approved. So, would you rather, if you could do it again, if you were a single man, have an AI girlfriend or a real girlfriend?
Real.
Okay. Okay. So there's a sovereign model. It's Australian made. They'll have some stupid name like Matilda or something like that. It is 20% worse than a frontier model. Yeah? And you can only choose one. Which one would you? And you operate it only in Australia. Which one would you choose?
That's easy. I would always have horses for courses, and I would always choose it for the things that needed to be local, colloquial, all the things that mattered, pick up certain language. I think that's an easy, but I wouldn't, like all things, I wouldn't apply a less intelligent competence to things that need high level intelligence. But as we talked about before, I think the vast majority I would still give to the model that was less obviously competent because it doesn't need that level of intelligence.
Okay. So you have a data center in Sydney. The model is controlled in California. Whose AI is it?
American.
Okay. Where would you trust your Decidr's intelligence if you had to choose between one or the other? The Australian government or Silicon Valley?
I still have to go to the Australian government.
Okay. I think we might have covered this before. So you've got a Holden token, Camry token, or a Ferrari token. Which one actually runs your business?
Camry.
Okay. I know the answer to this question already. So cut your AI budget in half today.
Or Holden. Depends.
Holden.
Depends.
Got arrested.
Which Holden it was?
Oh God, the V8 one, the good ones. The Maloo, which is for all of our North American,
HSV,
yeah, for all our North American listeners. When I came to Australia, what is it? A ute, which is a car which has a It's a love child of a truck and a car.
Dependable, consistent will always be the choice for
Said no one of a Holden ever.
of the organization.
Okay.
For the organization.
Okay, for the organization. We have had PaulBot. Remember PaulBot?
Very bad thing happened.
It was a very bad thing. I believe I had to get involved in that. It was saying things I didn't like. The explicatives or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of swear words coming out of that mall. So it escaped its sandbox. Who makes the apology? Probably me. Probably me in that case. Who makes the apology call? You, the CEO, the CTO,
We wrote this
or the agent? Not me. PaulBot wrote the agent. Who makes the apology? In this case, PaulBot goes out into the world. You would love that. That's like literally
Yes
your
and no.
dream.
I'd love it for about 5 minutes, I think, like I did last time.
To all of our viewers, it was
like-
active for 10
It
minutes.
was like, I answer like that. I do answer like that.
Yes.
I do. Stop answering like that.
Yeah, and I
Stop
queried
answering
it,
like
and
that.
I felt bad about myself for a long time, so we had to turn it off.
It was a very, it wasn't a
rough.
counseling.
It was
I would have to make the apology because if it really did represent and say things that I had said before, which had been trained on, and obviously you know this, but sometimes I'm creating up to 150,000 words a week that is being used, and that's millions of words over time, and all sorts of other analysis. I think that, well, there's two things. One is it's a very real, serious thing that I had to face very quickly, which was why does everyone go and ask it the things that you kind of shouldn't ask it, but they still did?
Yeah.
So that's hard to understand. And secondly, let's say the same harnesses or the same structures that we're talking about before about frontier models becoming more and more intelligent, that was a very old model, and that wasn't at all incredibly considered, and we rushed it, and it wasn't really meant for public consumption, I don't know how it really escaped, and it wasn't terrible, but it was bad enough to realize how important it is to put those harnesses on.
Okay. And two more.
And for the audiences, there was nothing super bad. It was just, I say what I think a lot, and that came through.
A lot. Paul is very moderate in these videos, and also very. Don't swear. You haven't sworn at all. I think I've sworn. Well done. We will get PaulBot. That'll be our first guest.
I'm known for my poise, but
banned.
when it's taken away, that was a very naked moment.
Okay. Well, it's hidden. It's still there. It's still there. When I want to go feel sorry about myself, I talk to it. Okay. So you have a choice, right? So you can have an AI. You can go to the movies because you and I are trying to see the Odyssey, and the only thing that we can get is handicapped seats at the front of the IMAX theater, which we're not doing. So we will see it in IMAX in 2092.
Good.
But so you can see a movie made by AI every week, or you could see a movie which is inspired by Christopher Nolan, trained on Christopher Nolan movies, or you can go to a Christopher Nolan movie once every 3 years. What would you choose?
Definitely.
And you can get good seats, by the way, not handicapped.
Definitely every 3 years. Look, I think one of the things you can't know this until you get older, and also I did. I'll put my hand up. I have seen a lot of movies in the cinema, and that experience was very important and special to me. Nobody goes to the cinema as much, but I do know that this came out the other day and it's obviously triggered a lot by his movie, but not just his movie. So people are getting out and going and seeing movies. I think that by itself separates the venue, and I think every now and then I find I want to watch a movie. I go to the different streaming services, and I frankly end up on YouTube because of the variety. Almost any unlimited context, I feel like watching. Quality doesn't matter as much. So I think as that becomes AI and personalized AI, I would probably at home be more inclined, in addition to this other entertainment thing that I think is going to start to happen. But that's not what I'm definitely not in the mood for that late, in the evening.
Okay. Because you're falling asleep.
In the morning when I'm on podcast, yes, but not in the.
Okay. I actually I have 2 more questions because these are fun. So what's your favorite movie that you and I have seen together?
Well, you know that I only watch a very small part of each movie.
You fall asleep, yes. Well, that we've attended. How's that?
And I do think we should start to go to movies in the morning so that I can actually make it through.
They have 6 a.m. at the IMAX. It's still sold out.
Look, similar to what
I have 3 that I'm going to say. So going into my.
How about you go and then I have one particular one, but it wasn't a favorite. It was memorable.
Yes.
Which was when we went to see
Jonah Hill.
No.
Russell Brand.
No. And it was freezing in the cinema.
Yeah. That's my second one. So Blade Runner.
And
Blade Runner. Because you fell asleep.
Something wrong with me, or I had an incredibly long nightmare. But I was so cold, and the machine noise Zimmerman, I think, soundtrack felt incredibly offensive.
Yes.
And I've never been as uncomfortable in my life, and I still have nightmares about it.
Yes. So to the audience, Paul falls asleep in 80% of the movies I go to with him, and we are at Blade Runner.
Probably
there was 4 of us in the movie theater because it was a Wednesday night, and it was super cold. Remember how cold it was?
It was so cold,
and you kept falling asleep in Hans Zimmer, and the soundtrack kept like startling him. It was like.
It was scary.
It was like you're being waterboarded. I
was in a nightmare. Actually, I was in a nightmare.
Yeah, you're like being like an audio waterboarded. That's what it was like.
Absolutely.
So Get Him to the Greek. That's another one with the furry walls because that's a great
incredible movie.
And one of my other movies I really liked that we saw together was, and this dates us, is Avatar. When we went to George Street Cinemas, and I remember looking across at you when they had the first curved screens. And I remember there wasn't a moment in a movie that has influenced your purchasing behavior more than curved screens. Because I remember after that, we had about 47 of them in the office.
Well, I haven't got any stories to tell about you because you actually just go to movies.
Because you're asleep.
You go to movies and just watch them. And
yes, there we go.
You're pretty predictable.
I am predictable. I like circling and I like skating in ovals.
You do like skating in ovals?
Yeah, I went this weekend as well. It was good.
How was that? How many
circles
reps did you do?
How many circles did I
see anything different?
Nope. And in Australia, they go counterclockwise.
Well, it's basically a human goldfish loop. Just going around a goldfish.
Well, it's novel for me because in Australia, just like we're in the southern hemisphere, everyone goes counterclockwise. Where in North America, you go clockwise.
Everyone's still just going around in a circle.
Get to use new muscles, I guess. And then lastly is so we'll end on like a semi serious note as an entree into your the main meal that you're teasing me with is so if you had to classify the frontier models into good and evil, put them in those camps for me.
I don't have the same view. I think, unfortunately, and this is one thing that again we learnt, where I think I was very excited about that, and again I didn't ask for it to happen, but someone made that trained model on my transcripts, and
PaulBot.
It was so good. It was so good for every good question you asked it. But then, for whatever reason, as soon as it gets out that you can ask it for opinions, and it has
unlimited
so many opinions, and it's so many opinions. I think that unfortunately means all the bad things that can happen will happen, and it's only how you can prepare to make sure that happens. Sorry, that's addressed very quickly, and and I know that the good thing about very large amounts of resources, which is exactly what happened again with a lot of other negative things with large companies, is at least they have very large investments in prevention and response, and so I think that's good. That shouldn't lead to regulatory capture, and hopefully that doesn't mean that they're the only ones that can do and be in that situation. And so I think that's very important as well, to be open. And then I think the other more pressing and more important thing to understand is all of the negative things that possibly could happen that aren't human driven are going to be much harder to stop. And so I don't know how that plays out, as not everybody, I mean, we already have OpenClaw, we already have a lot of things that are I think there's a lot of embarrassing things as well that have happened because of that. Money being spent that shouldn't have, and all sorts of things.
So kind of like AI becomes, it comes solely as like the weather. Right? We can predict that there's going to be a tornado, kind of, but not really.
If you ask something to do something and it can do it, you always have to be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And so
that's what PaulBot definitely got.
And I think I think the important, I mean, look, really importantly, it doesn't affect 99% of people, but 1%'s a lot. And so, when it comes to the world's population, you've really got to work on much smaller numbers than that. It's got to feel like flying. It's got to feel like an amount of effort is invested, and safety is not on the menu as one of the things that we should be discussing. It's not a choice. Like, we just can't have that. And I think that...
Is that the models, or is that governments are responsible for that? Who should pay? Like, who should be responsible? Who should pay for it? Because they're potentially two different things.
It's a hard question to answer. It's almost, I wouldn't say never, but I don't think it's going to be the models, frontier models, and the frontier companies that are the ones that they're going to have. They have these problems every day, for sure. They have ways to capture that, because the nice thing is that you have to use language to capture it. They have competing interests now because they're moving towards constantly having to show their quarterly results, and that's going to mean that you don't turn revenues off. And there's a lot of things that are happening.
We've seen it before, right? We've seen it before with social media, right? It's
not the big things that worry me. It's all the lots of little things that worry me. And what I mean by that is where they are influential at a true level. And when you're influential at that true cultural, multi-billions of people level, you can do things that you don't realize, that you don't intend, that don't form part of any type of consideration until it's happening. And that's why you need lots and lots of investment in balancing what is definitely going to be more good than bad, but you need to make sure that it's not 1% and it's it's very small.
Okay.
One in 10,000, one in 100,000.
Okay. Drop the knowledge bomb.
Well, we're in a situation in which we are in the middle of a lot of conversations. We have incredibly large, constantly increasing fidelity of what it is that we're going to deliver in, let's say, 6, 12, 18 months. It feels always too slow, but we have very large aspirations and very large amounts to show, and so that's going to be positive. Do you think, and this is my daily question to myself, but I wanted to ask it in front of the audience so that it can be on record. I think it's the time for big aspirations. I think aspirations and culture at every level, the culture you have with a single friend, to your family, to all of these things that you didn't define well before. You can't define culture. You can have a view of it. You can participate in it. It's an unspoken agreement. But what are all these very, like we talk about vision, values, all of these things that were so nebulous in most companies are now becoming more and more important, more and more the size of the aspiration. Like you can't take your own time. These are all things that are kind of real, not for everybody, but for a lot of people now. It's not meant to be a serious question. It's actually meant to be more a talk it through and just tell people, not necessarily obviously what you can't, but tell people that, there's a lot of things people like us are working on that are going to give them new tools and new opportunities, distribute the power, distribute the opportunities. What do you finish up by giving us the positive side? You are incredibly good at that when you think about it. What's it look like in a little bit longer time for, benefiting of our kids and the people that are, they're in the middle. They're not, they're not innocent bystanders, but they really want to be participants of what's going on.
It was just this morning, I was scrolling on a not to be named social media platform between the hours of academic paper reading, article. And it was Ian Fleming's day. So Ian Fleming wrote James Bond. So this was 30s, and it started at 7:30. Wake up with the sun. Go swimming. Have some scrambled eggs. Go swimming again. Write 1,500 words. Have lunch with his wife. Have a siesta. The siesta was great. It's like 12:15 to 2:45, which I thought was pretty good.
Very accurate.
Write another 500 words. Then it was have 3 strong drinks, play backgammon with his wife, and then go to bed. Okay, so I know it coming across my lips, it may sound silly, but I actually this morning I was reading it, going, "Wow, what a life!" Because why was that a good life? He was spending it with people he loved. He was likely doing things that he really liked to do. And though the things that he was doing was, I bet my bottom dollar, was enhancing the quality of the work that he was doing. And he had tightly defined, this was his regular day, right? He had tightly defined periods of work. It was 1,500 words, 500 words. And the last 500 words, and we're numbering the pages because he was doing it on a typewriter, probably. So he was now organizing what he had produced that day. And I don't think any literary critic will ever say, James Bond was a piece of literary art, but it was incredibly successful, and it was a phenomenon in popular culture. And so that made me happy today when I was reading that, because it actually painted me a picture of like what work could be like if we all found the passions that we would like to do, and we all organized our time around those passions, right? At the moment, like, there's work in our lives that we're organized around, or maybe I'm projecting here. I thought that was cool. But getting into your, like, linking that to your question, I think that I think we're just entering the early adopters curve. I think that what we're talking about.
You think we're there already? I don't think we're there.
I said we're just entering. So there's more people who are thinking about some of the things that we're talking about today than there were last month and the month before, and certainly the year before. We see it, like we see it in the data, right? So I think it's going to be longer than we expect to get to Ian Fleming's day. However, I also think that there's going to be a tremendous amount of friction happening over the net, probably through to at least I think we'll start to see it in 2030, to be honest. I don't know why. I think it's just like that's the time it takes for things to metabolize through, right? The SME, because that's the majority of the employers, right, in a country. But I think post 2030, I think it'll be quite interesting for a good group of people. I am concerned about the frontier models, taking all of the intellectual profit of everything. I'm trying to be positive, but
you're trying.
I'm really trying.
You did so well.
I am a positive guy.
Go back to schedules. That lights you up. Schedules light you up.
Yeah. Well, it was schedules and swimming and martinis, like all those things.
I know, but the 12:15. Let's be honest, like 12:15. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if I could.
2:15 to 2:45. That sounds like a perfect siesta.
Yeah.
Not 1 minute more, not 1 minute less.
It does. I do like a good schedule.
All of the things you said, I think, are honestly more available and more possible to more people than ever in history.
Agree.
And that is
I agree with that. I agree with that.
That is going to be...
Well, people have access to AI, right? So there's AI haves and AI have-nots. Remember that super smart guy that we met from Nigeria?
Yep.
Look,
makes and models of a car, makes and models of an organization, and makes and models of a life. I think that's a type of design that people have not formalized. I think those things will be more formalized. And I think by formalizing anything that's designed, you can have preference, and all the things you're talking about become somebody's perfect day. And mine certainly does not have very sharp...
You're invited to my day.
...timing. Well, I'll be late.
I think
I'll be late for a few things, all of the things, but I'll be in the water and maybe have more than a couple of drinks. And, the difference will be up to the individual, but the opportunity to then, I think, connect the whole of the world and the terrible amounts of polarization that are happening, all of those things I think can be sorted as we move back to a moderate and weirdly higher conviction about your day and what you were talking about than before. And so I think that's a pretty exciting thing to look forward to. So let's finish on that.
Okay.
And thank you very much for joining us on this third episode
Look to the camera
of David and Paul
The
talking
Decidr
to each
room.
other.
Bye.